Acquiring the knowledge of effectively implementing materials and textures is essential for giving your SketchUp model a vibrant and realistic appearance. In this video, we will explore the process of applying textures from the built-in material library of SketchUp into your model, and I will show you on how you can purge unused colors to keep a good file performance. So the first thing I would like to mention is that you always have to make sure to apply your material or texture inside of the object. Let's quickly see what I mean by that. I have placed 3 bookshelves in here. The first is a basic grouped. The second is a component, and the third is just a copy of this component. Now, if I click on my paint bucket using my B, the colors will open. In the previous model, we have started to talk about materials and how to apply them, and I mentioned that it's always best to toggle inside the groups to apply textures. If you have a grouped object and simply want to colorate all surfaces and edges, you actually don't have to go inside the group. It could work without going or toggling inside the group as well. Let's choose a wooden texture from the library and apply it to my group bookcase without actually going inside. You see, that works too. It's a little different if you work with a component. If I was to colorate my whole component bookcase, you will notice that if I don't go inside my component, the texture will only apply to this specific outside group. It behaves quite similar if you remember the Windows video we have seen when we did the panels. You actually have to go inside the component in order for it to apply certain changes to its clones as well. Now, if I toggle inside my component and hold down the Shift key in order to apply my texture to all materials, you can see the difference. So this is important to know that in case you work with components, and sometimes it's not always immediately clear if I download 3D models from the SketchUp warehouse, if it's just a group or a component. So I usually make it a habit to always go inside my object, no matter if it's a group or a component, to colorate it. This way I make sure in case I have copies of a component that they have been colorated as well. Now let's talk about performance real quick. Every time you apply a texture to your object, it will be automatically saved within your model. You can view those saved materials and textures that are in your model by selecting Colors in Model. On a Windows, you can simply select it from the top. On a Mac, you have to click on the little house icon in order to get there. Now you will find also the materials we have applied to our bookcase. Most of the others are from Heather, the figure that appears once you create a new file in SketchUp. So if I remove Heather, you see that the colors still remain. Now sometimes too many colors that are saved can slow down your model as well, and you may want to clean that up once in a while. Similar to the component, you can purge unused materials, only that is not accessible within the window. So you have to toggle and click on Window, Model Info, and select Statistics. There you can see that your materials are listed here as well. And if you click on Purge Unused, you see that the colors that have been saved for Heather are gone as well. So it also cleans the unused components at this point. I recommend doing that before you stop working on your project as a habit, as the more you collect of unnecessary components and materials, the slower your file will get with time. And if you haven't done the cleaning in some weeks and you try to clean your SketchUp, it might crash depending on the performance of your computer. So just make it a habit and do it once before you stop working on your project, just to have a clean end. The next video, I will show you on how you can scale materials. So in the previous video, we have used some wooden texture from the SketchUp built-in materials. I also mentioned that once you apply a material, it will be saved under the Colors and Model section. Now, if you have many colors in one file and have a hard time finding it as the colors and textures are appearing within this window, you can always use your eyedropper function when using your bucket tool. This way you can select the material you want to edit and it will appear selected within this window. Remember, it's not the same pipette as in the color window. You can observe how the material selection changes as I use the pipette tool. Now let's modify the gray material in this wooden texture. On a Mac, you will need to double-click on the icon to open the Edit options, while on the Mac, there is an additional tab labeled Edit. Accessing the Edit mode allows you to adjust the scale appearance. I always keep the chain active to prevent texture distortion. Let's reduce its size now by entering a lower value and pressing Enter. We will also adjust the other materials in the same manner. To exit the Edit mode, simply close the tab. Now let's explore other options in the Edit mode. For instance, if we are working with sheer curtains, changing the opacity could prove useful. By clicking on the color wheel, while still in Edit mode, we can modify the color while preserving the texture. Additionally, we can fine-tune the darkness using the color sliders. And to revert to original color, let's reset it and opt for the HSV slider. Adjusting the saturation slightly might yield a smoother color effect. Similarly, like the color wheel, the HSV slider allows for supple adjustments to the hue as well. The Edit mode offers extensive opportunities to tailor the material properties according to your preferences while retaining the actual texture. This versatility adds a wonderful dimension to the design process. What is essential to note here is that when you modify the properties of a texture within this specific model, it only applies to that particular instance. If you revert to the built-in materials from SketchUp and reselect the same material we have chosen at the beginning, you will find that it retains its original properties. This approach allows you to have a backup of the main texture, and it's advisable to primarily change the texture under the In Model section to avoid altering the original textures. Let's explore further possibilities. If you wish to change the position of a texture on a specific surface, you can navigate inside the group until you can select the surface itself. Then click right until you see the Texture Position option. If the option is not visible, try selecting the material from the Colors in Model section and use the bucket tool again to apply it to the surface. Press the spacebar to activate the Select tool and then right-click again. The option should appear now. This might be a possible bug in SketchUp. Now you will notice 4 different icons. The red one is primarily used to position specific visible areas on the surface. Here it doesn't matter whether you click on the red icon or anywhere else and try to move the position of your surface. The green icon is for adjusting the scale of this particular surface texture only. It's a little different from changing the scale globally in the Edit mode, as this scale will only apply to this specific chosen texture or surface. The blue and yellow icons are for distorting the texture, which I don't often use, but they might be helpful for your specific needs. For rotating a texture, it's safer to right-click and use the rotate function rather than using the green icon, as it may unintentionally change the scale as well. To revert to the previous state, right-click and choose Reset. Or if you're happy with your changes, simply click Done. Now, if you have two edges that kind of merge together in one and you want your grain to go all over the object, there's a simple trick. Simply select the adjusted texture we just positioned using the bucket tool, and then you just colorate the entire object. So this way the grain will flow consistently around the object without the need to adjust each surface separately. Keep in mind that if you make global changes to the scale after adjusting your pattern, the scale will change again once you make subsequent modifications. It is advisable to first choose the texture's scale and then adjust the position of the texture if necessary. In the next video, we will explore how to find more textures from the SketchUp warehouse. In today's class, we will explore how to obtain textures from the SketchUp warehouse. The first method I would like to demonstrate is quite simple. Let's begin by retrieving a model from the warehouse. Remember, to keep your file clean, it's advisable to download any content into a new file. This way, you can avoid unnecessary colors and components being saved in your current model, which you don't need. When you access the warehouse, you can search for any specific texture by name. By the way, I just noticed that SketchUp has updated the 3D warehouse, making the model preview looks much better. For example, let's search for birch plywood. Once you find a texture, a model, or a texture swatch that you would like, download it into your new file. Notice that all the new materials from this model will now appear in your workspace. In this case, we have two different textures, one for the side and another for the top. Now let's use the classic trick involving the paint bucket and the pipette function. We will sample the main material until it appears in our color window. Then we will switch to our original file and easily apply the new material to the bookshelf. The new material is now automatically added into your model as well. From here, we can adjust the scale or fine-tune the textures as demonstrated in my previous videos. Let's also sample the sides of the bookshelf and apply the texture to these surfaces. The texture looks a bit small, we can increase its scale. Additionally, we can create lines between the surfaces to separate them. And then we can rotate the texture vertically on one of the sides. We will then sample that modified texture, and apply it to the other side. This method illustrates how to obtain a texture from the warehouse and apply it to your 3D models by sampling a material from any object. Now let's quickly reset the model to show you a different approach. Returning to the previously downloaded model, suppose you want to extract just the material without downloading the entire 3D object. Click on the actual model, not the download button, and you will find a wealth of information, including the material count. From there, you can directly download any material you desire in your file. It will immediately become available as a new texture in your model once you apply it. This way, you can use this material without actually having to download the entire model for sampling. With the vast area of models available in the warehouse, you will surely find suitable materials to work with. If you're not satisfied with how a particular material looks in your downloaded 3D model, feel free to replace it with another material from the warehouse. Now it's your turn to try out both methods, selecting a material or object from the warehouse and downloading the material straight without having to actually download the 3D model. In this video, I will show you on how to import external materials or so-called seamless texture. But before we actually start, you need to understand what I mean if I say seamless. Here's an example of a texture that is not seamless and one that actually is. A texture that is not seamless will most likely look like this. You can see that the pattern doesn't repeat properly. The reason for this is that this material has not been correctly produced or cropped in a way that the edges repeat seamlessly. Now let's view the seamless texture. You can see that once I expand my rectangle, it automatically adds the material in a super seamless way. So how is that possible? Let's have a look at the JPEG file this texture originates from. Imagine a seamless texture consists of this one cropped view, which then will be repeated on all sides, meaning this specific image will be placed on top, on the left, on the right, and on the bottom. Now you see that the bottom planks are cut in half. This is because it will be placed by SketchUp at the top, so it combines into one full plank. The sides are cut in a way that they will complete the plank once the other side has been placed as well. This is how seamless textures work, and if you notice your material or textures you got from the SketchUp warehouse is not looking correctly, most likely it has not been a seamless texture. Someone may have used an image of a material and cut it in a way it doesn't complete the planks. Obviously, different shaded areas can also have an impact to the outcome of a texture. That is why usually seamless textures have a very similar brightness overall, and you usually don't have strong contrasting areas like in here. Let's have a look at some websites where you could get seamless textures. There are plenty more to find for sure. Please note that not all websites may be free or not all textures can actually be used for commercial purposes. So make sure to always check the license agreement before using any texture or material. What helps is to look out for PD, public domain licenses, or CCO, Creative Commons CCO license, materials or textures. I'm not doing any advertising for showing these websites. I simply provide you with some resources. It is your responsibility to check the license agreements. I would never recommend to just use an image from Google and try to create a texture from that, as usually those images are not free to use or have some copyright obligations. I would rather stick to paid or free sources that are actually marked as public or as a CC0. Let's try now to download a seamless texture from Polyhaven, which I know has a CC0 license, and let's import it into SketchUp. Let's find a suitable seamless floor material. You can download the 4K version. This is more than enough when it comes to quality. Once downloaded, usually it comes with different other files as well. You won't need all of them. In fact, for our purpose, we only need the JPEG or PNG file that showcase my material. The other files might be for further rendering programs. Let's go back to SketchUp and create a new rectangle. To bring the downloaded texture into my model, I select my surface and click File, Import. This preview might look slightly different on the windows, but make sure to select all supported textures and select the option that you want to import this file as a texture and not as an image. Once it's loaded, the material will hover over your surface. You can select the endpoint and move your mouse up. You will notice that you can type in a value if you know the actual size of the material, or just place it in a way it looks good. You can always adjust the scale afterwards. What you can see as well is that the material is now already created in my InModel section. And SketchUp has automatically mapped this one surface seamlessly. If you wish, you can modify this texture in a way that suits best for you, as we have seen in the previous videos. You could create a component from this material, upload it to the SketchUp warehouse, and save it within your private mode. Just to make sure that you are the only one using it, as you may be able to use it, but may be restricted in actually sharing it. But this way, you can have this texture correctly scaled within your SketchUp warehouse, and you can just extract the material from the warehouse for your next project, instead of having to save this material on a computer. Okay guys, materials and textures can have a big difference when it comes to the quality of your projects. I recommend always opting for good quality materials in order to achieve a professional look within your SketchUp model. Hi guys, now let's create our own textures. If you can't find a specific texture from the SketchUp warehouse or any of the free websites that offer seamless textures, you may sometimes need to create your own textures. This is also usually the case if you would like to showcase a very specific tile within your project. Let's say for my project, my client chose a tile from TileCloud. Officially said, you can contact TileCloud and ask if you can use their image and for your project in order to show your clients how the tile will look. Usually this shouldn't be a problem, and most companies are happy if you work with their tiles, as most likely it generates an order from that. Okay, so let's say I got the permission to use this image from my project. If you don't have much experience in Photoshop, a good alternative is creating a texture using Canva. Canva must be known by most designers at this point. If you haven't heard from it, please visit their website, as it's amazing and really worth every penny. So my client chose a tile that is 600 millimeters by 600 millimeters. In inches, this would be around 23.5 by 23.5 inches. I create a new design with this custom size. What I can do now is simply load my image into this square. For this example, I would just choose a free image that I got from Unsplash. I position it in a way that works for me and looks good. So this is a 600 by 600 millimeter tile. If I would upload this in SketchUp, I would be missing the grout, obviously. That is why I create a texture using Canva, where I can create my grout in here. Let's choose a rectangle and remove the inside color to only have a border color. Increase the border thickness, but remember that in SketchUp, this texture will be matte or placed on all sides again. So the thicker your border is, it will double in thickness later as it will be placed again. Let's try it with a very thin grout. I can create a grout color of my choice depending on the tile I'm placing. I can have a white grout or some darker one. So I'm happy with this one now. Then I can export my tile as a JPEG file. Once downloaded, I create a rectangle in SketchUp that has the exact size of my tile. Then I can just import my tile with a measure I already know. See how quickly we created a seamless texture for a specific tile I wanted. Now, what I want to mention here is that you can see that I only have one variation of tile. If you don't mind the repetition of the texture, then this works. If you would like to go a step further, you could create a seamless texture with different variations in tiles. For this, I would need to create a few more variations in Canva. Let's say I can rotate my image a little bit, increase or decrease its size. You get the idea, just to make them look a little different. Then I download all of them. So you could have 3 or 4 different variations. Now I need to import each of them into one square of my correct measurement. Then I place them together as one bigger square. Now they are all 4 separate materials, and in order to create one seamless texture from those, I simply select all of them, and by clicking right, Connect Surfaces, I'm being asked if I want to delete the interior edges. I click Yes, and here we have a seamless texture made from 4 different variations, which I can now create again as a component and upload into my warehouse to use for further projects. You can be very creative when it comes to working with Canva. Canva Pro has many graphics and images which you can use and create tiles from. Just don't forget to use a tile grout, otherwise you will end up not being able to see the tiles separated in SketchUp. We have talked about where to get seamless textures, how to create some basic seamless textures using Canva. What is missing is on how to create actual seamless texture merely using SketchUp. Now this technique is for some more difficult tile patterns or wooden textures. But once you understand how this works, you can adapt this method to create great seamless textures of materials that have a more difficult shape than just a rectangle. Let me show you on how to create a wooden seamless texture like this. Let's say you need to use a very specific flooring type for your project and you can't find a similar seamless texture in the warehouse or on any other websites. We can create our own seamless texture from any image. First, let's import any wooden texture as an image which is not seamless. In order for us to work with this, we need to explode the image by right-click Explode. Now it's already visible as a texture in our model section. But obviously, when we start to expand this texture, you will see it is not seamless. So I start by creating a bunch of single planks first. Let's start with one single plank that is not cut. I use the rectangle tool. And then I copy this plank, selecting its surface to the side. We need to create 5 more planks in order to create a seamless texture. So I copy this plank 5 more times. Now let's make them all look different by moving its texture within SketchUp. Maybe you need to reposition or even scale them a little bit. Just make sure they look complete and are not cut on any sides. Okay, I have my 5 different planks. But right now, they're all using the same image texture that we have. We need to make each of them individual in order to combine them later as one seamless texture. So I go ahead and click Right to make them a unique texture. As you can see, what it does at this point is it creates this single plank, and it's also being saved in the model section. Now we start to select the first 3 planks we want to lay next to each other. I would choose some that don't look too close to each other to give this a nicer character. And to not get confused which one I already picked, I start moving 3 of them to the sides. Now let's line them up. I start placing a copy of them next to each other. We're still working with an open source, so no groups or anything, so be careful when you place them, as they are sticky. The next row needs to be placed shifted, as this is usually the case how wooden floor is being laid. Let's grab one of the planks I haven't used and grab it by the midpoint to then copy it to the end point of my right plank. Then I need to take the exact same plank and place it on the left side, as remember, we want a seamless texture, and this plank will be completed on the other side later. Then I fill the inside with the last 2 planks I haven't used. The next row could be any of the planks, it doesn't matter. What is more important is that for row number 2 and row number 4, you use the same planks on the left and on the right side, as these are the one that we cut in half. You could go on and create more rows if you wish, but 4 are enough, as I find. To finish this seamless texture, we need to create a line that cuts the planks that are sticking out. Then we delete the sticking out planks and start selecting all of the lines and surfaces that are left. And now comes the magic. We click right and choose Combine Textures. And here we have a seamless texture that appears in our In-Model section, which we can then upload to our private texture selection to use later. You see how I expand my floor texture, it doesn't have these cut edges? Now you understand how seamless textures work, and you could adapt this method to any texture you need to create. It can get sometimes a little tricky to see how you have to build up a seamless texture, so you want to start with actually trying to find a similar pattern, if that works, to showcase to your client. I rarely have to create my own seamless texture, as usually I find what I need using the SketchUp warehouse or one of the websites that offer free seamless textures. But still, I didn't want to miss out on showing you this extended method. In the next videos, we will start applying floor texture to our Eden Springs house. In this video, I would like to show you a little trick when it comes to applying materials on rounded surfaces. I have built this 3D bench. If you'd like to see how I build it, check out Module 6 Time-Lapse Furniture and Accessory Build to see how I created it. What I would like to show you in this video is more about how to fix distorted material. Let's import a seamless boucle texture I created from the warehouse. Now my material is saved in my In-Model section, and I can apply it straight to my surface. The problem now is that I have parts where the texture looks distorted. This is because SketchUp not always knows where to apply the material correctly. If you don't mind this slight distortion, you could keep it as it is, but if you would like to fix those areas a little bit, there's a trick of projecting materials on a specific surface. Let's see how that works. First, I need a flat surface like a square or rectangle and apply the material I need to project. Now I need to move this flat shape in the same direction as the surface that I want to fix is. In this case, it's going to be aligned with the green axis. Let's explode the square so I can access my material easier. Then I select my surface, click Right, Texture, and on Projected. We now told SketchUp that this texture is a projected texture. Let's sample it. There must be some kind of background information that SketchUp now stores with this new sampling. We apply the new projected material on the surface that doesn't look correct. Ta-da! Here we have the fixed material. SketchUp mapped this surface now correctly. Sometimes it's just a tryout, reapply, and see how SketchUp is mapping it onto the surface. In the final step, we could adjust the scale a little bit to make it slightly smaller. Now let's compare it with the version that was not projected, where I simply applied my material to it. Do you see the quality difference? This really can improve your 3D design outcome. So whenever you download something from the warehouse, just place the material on a flat surface, move it to the correct side so it aligns with the surface you want to adjust, and start projecting it into the surface. I hope you enjoyed this video and find this tip useful. See you in the next video. Since now you know how to find and create your own seamless textures, let's use the seamless textures that I created for our Eden Springs home. We open our framework 3D file from Module 3 or your own file that you have created until this point. We will start by applying floor material. First, let's move any 2D symbols that we might still have to the Spatial Planning tag. So I select my tagging tool and click on the correct layer and start carefully tagging those 2D symbols. Just make sure to click on the correct object, as you may start moving objects that you don't want. You can always use Command or Ctrl Z to go back. Since I use another file for my 3D, I don't mind moving my 2D symbols to another layer. I don't want to delete this layer yet, as I will use some of my 2D symbols to build up in 3D. So just hide the layer for now. In the end, make sure all symbols have been moved. Now it's a clean 3D framework file. We can start preparing the areas to which we will apply our floor material. Let's hide the door and windows to only see our walls and floors. In this instance, I chose to not display the floor thickness. My floor is a flat surface and has no thickness. It depends how detailed you need your design to be, or if you're working with a new build or a home that already has a floor, so you may need to adjust this regarding to your project needs. For our Eden Springs home, I don't want to display the floor thickness, so we keep it flat. Now I need to decide from where to where I would like my floor to be laid. We make sure we work on the correct layer. I could create another layer and place the floor surface to it, but it's easier for me to just continue applying my floor texture within this layer it is currently on. You can always rename it too, just see what works for you. I personally don't like to work with too many layers, as it can get super confusing with time and it happens very fast that you start placing furniture or materials to a wrong layer. So I placed my pencil on this layer, so the material I will download will be placed inside this tag. Let's toggle within the floor group until I can select my surface. In the office, my client would like to have a bubble carpet. I need to decide where it will be laid. Let's say I want it only to be laid until the beginning of the door, so I create a line to separate. If there was no line, I could create one. Let's apply the first floor material. You can choose any material you like from the warehouse or use the carpet material I have created. You can find it by typing in beige carpet Eden Springs within the warehouse. Do not download the whole file, as you will literally get a rectangle flat surface with a texture. You would then have to sample the texture using the pipette. Better just click on the checkered symbol, which will only download the texture itself. And this texture will then be placed under the in-model materials. Now, what's left to do is just applying the material to the floor surface. You could adjust the optics to your preference, as we have learned in the previous videos, changing the color, size, and so on. In the hallway, I would like to apply a nice checkered tile that I have created myself as well. Let's define the area I will place my floor surface, as right now the whole floor is connected. Then I would like to create another inlay border which will go around the area. I use the offset tool and create a border of about 150 millimeters or 5.9 inches and adjust the lines as needed. Let's apply a terrazzo seamless texture from the warehouse by searching Terrazzo White Eden Springs. This will be an inlay border without grout. For the middle section, I'm going to apply a checkered floor. So you can find it by searching Checkered Floor Eden Springs. I apply it and I move my tiles a bit. When I created this tile, I made sure I created the tile in the final size. You could always create some guides to help you placing the correct size in case you downloaded a material and don't know its original size. Again, you don't have to use my textures. You can get creative and create your own or choose any from the warehouse. I'm leaving out the bathrooms for now as we will finish those in another video. For the main living, kitchen and laundry room, I'm choosing a concrete floor. You will find it by searching Concrete Eden Springs. For the bedroom and the closet area, I'm going to choose my checkered floor again. In certain instances, SketchUp will automatically enclose an open area when it senses collected lines. Should this occur, you can easily revert that process by deleting the generated surface. To validate the accuracy of your adjustments, turn on all necessary layers like the windows and doors. Now it's your turn to apply material to those areas. In the upcoming video, we will delve into crafting baseboards.